Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the first Game Dev Club of this academic year. We are working towards a 3D skull and crossbones. We've practiced a two-dimensional skull and crossbones in Inkscape, and I've seen some fantastic ones of those so far, but we want to try and make something in 3D. So let's see how far we can get in about 5 minutes. We'll start with the default cube. And if you've not used Blender before, the three most useful keyboard shortcuts for you are G, and then let go of G. And then after you've pressed G, you can press GX to move in the X-axis, or then Y or Z. So G is grab. You've got S for scale, and then you move your mouse and then click when you're happy, or escape if you don't like it. So G for grab, S for scale, and again SX or SY and SZ. So we've got G, S, and R. R for rotate. And again, you can rotate around the X-axis, the Y-axis, or the Z-axis by pressing and letting go. So let's scale it down by pressing S to make it small. Click. And then SX to scale it up in the X-axis. That's going to be the main bone of our skull and crossbone. That's going to be like this bit. Next, we want the blob on the end. So, how should we do this? I'm going to Shift A to add a cube. G, X, move it over there. S to splodge it over there. And at this point, I don't want it to look like a cube. I want it to look like a sphere. So Control and 1 or Control and 2 or Control and 3 adds a subdivision surface modifier, which means it's still a cube. It just looks a bit smoother. I'm going to stick with Control and 2 because the more you subdivide it, the slower it gets, the more complicated it gets, the more vertices we have. So Control and 2. I'm going to do the same for this bone, and it looks a bit dodgy because we started with what was a cuboid, and pressing Control 2 has smoothed it to the point it doesn't look very good. So at this point, we're going to change between object mode and edit mode, keyboard shortcut Tab, and I want to put some loop cuts in. Loop cuts are some extra vertices around here. That means it's not going to look so, I don't know how to describe it, but Control R is the keyboard shortcut for a loop cut. If you hover your mouse over where you want to slice, it's like slicing the bone in half with a bone saw. Not fun, don't try it at home. But you click, there we go, and then we put those extra loop around there. Control and R again, click, and then this time move them over here, like that. So that's better. That looks a bit like a bone. This one, I want to duplicate. Shift and D for duplicate. And again, you can press X or Y. I want it to be duplicated in the Y-axis. There we go. And I'm looking around by holding the mouse wheel down and wiggling the mouse in Blender. There we go. You can shift and left click to select. GY, GX. There we go. Shift and D, X. And there we go. We've got a bone. It doesn't look particularly good. Let's maybe make it a bit thicker in the middle. Edit mode, Tab, Control R, loop cut, S to scale. I don't know whether you want it thinner in the middle or bigger in the middle. I'm going to make it thinner. How about that? Right. Now, I want to make it look less, I don't know, sharp around the edges. So right click, shade smooth. I'm going to do that for all of these. Right click, shade smooth. Oops, need to click on it to select it first. And then I want to join them all together. So shift click, shift click, shift click. Come on. I'm not doing that very well. Let's zoom in, shift click. And I think it's Control and J, but it doesn't really matter because if you forget, you can just press F3 on your keyboard. Not F and then 3, but the function 3 keyboard at the top, and search for join. Oh, it was Control J. So it's all now the same shape. Why is that good? Well, it's good because you can Shift D to duplicate. We've got two of them now. I'm going to press Escape so it goes back to where it was. And when I rotate one, it rotates in the wrong place. I could fix that, but it doesn't really matter. Let's rotate that one like that. That one like that. G, Y, so they're crossed over. Not terrible. So that's going to be the crossbone. I now need a skull. We've had 5 minutes. Not a lot of time. Shift A to add. Let's add a cube. GY. Control 2 for a subdivision surface subdivision, I can't say it. Subdivision surface modifier. Right click shade smooth. S to scale. Right, what do we want? I kind of want to pull the teeth down and then put some nostrils in and some eye sockets. This is a bit more complicated than just grabbing and scaling. In edit mode, by pressing tab, I can select vertices, or I can shift and click and get all of the vertices, or I can select edges, or I can select faces. Faces I think are much easier for editing. So that's keyboard shortcut 3 on your keyboard, or clicking up here. I'm going to scale that down at the bottom of the head and extrude it. New keyboard shortcut alert. E for extrude. Then what do I want to do? I don't really know. I kind of want to put some bits for the eye. So how can I do that? Well, if I select this and press F3 to search for subdivide, I can split that face into multiple faces. Down here, I can choose how many times I chop it. That might do. Now, should be able to put some eye sockets in. If I shift and select both of those, scale those up, E to extrude and push that in. There we go. E to extrude, push that in. Kind of want a nose now, so I'll pull that out. It's just E again. No, I don't want to do that. Control Z. Let's scale it X first and then extrude. Yeah. And then subdivide, F3 subdivide. I want nostrils. So do I need to subdivide a bit more? No, I don't like that. I'm just going to E to extrude, pull that in. That looks terrible. E to extrude, pull that in. But maybe if I shrink it with S, it looks alright. Doesn't look great. I want some teeth. How can I do some teeth? E to extrude to subdivide. Maybe I can just E to extrude that and E to extrude that. It looks a bit mean, but it's alright. The time that we've got. Right, I must finish by 10 past to give you some time to do this. The last thing I'll do, Shift A, I'll add a cube. GY, GZ, S, Control 2 to subdivide it. GX, aha, GZ. That's going to be a little pupil in here. How do we change the colour? Well, we can change the material down here. We'll add a new material. And at the moment, if I change the material, you don't see the colour at all. That's because we're in solid mode. If you go to material mode, now we should be able to see the colour. Let's make that black. Shift D to duplicate. Move it along on the x-axis. And that, it's not the world's greatest, but in the time available, it'll do. See if you can make a 3D skull and crossbones.